The sound of 10,000 boots hitting the ground in perfect unison still echoes in my dreams. But that morning, as I stood in my childhood bedroom holding my dress uniform, all I could hear was my father's laughter from the night before, cold, mocking, cutting through my heart like shrapnel. "Playing soldier again, Alexis?" His words had sliced through the air as I'd shown him my promotion letter. "When are you going to grow up and get a real job?" That was 12 hours ago. Now, as the transport helicopter circled over the parade grounds where thousands of America's finest waited to witness my promotion to general, I realized my father had no idea what was about to unfold before his eyes. I've worn many uniforms in my life, but none hurt as much as the first one. I was 8 years old when I found my grandfather's World War II medals hidden in our attic. The bronze and silver caught the dusty light streaming through the window, and for the first time in my young life, I felt something I couldn't name. Purpose, maybe, or belonging. My father found me there an hour later, sitting cross-legged on the wooden floor, the Purple Heart cradled in my small hands like it was made of glass. "Put that junk away, Alexis." His voice was sharp, impatient. "Your grandfather was a fool who threw his life away for strangers. Don't you start getting ideas." But the ideas had already taken root. By age 12, I was enrolled in the local military academy's youth program. Every Saturday, I'd put on that crisp uniform with its polished buttons and pristine patches, and for 6 hours, I wasn't just the daughter of Marcus Hawthorne, the successful but bitter lawyer who saw weakness in everything noble. I was Cadet Hawthorne, and I belonged somewhere. The first time my father saw me in uniform, he laughed. Not the warm laughter of a proud parent, but something cold and dismissive that made my stomach clench. "Look at you," he said, circling me like I was evidence in one of his court cases. "Playing dress-up in clothes that don't suit you. You think putting on a costume makes you special?" My mother, Grace, stood in the doorway wringing her hands. She never contradicted him, never defended me. Her silence was sometimes louder than his words. "The Hawthorne name means something in this town," my father continued, straightening his own expensive suit. "We're lawyers, business people, civilization builders. We don't play in the mud with soldiers." I was 12 years old, and I didn't have the words to tell him that some battles are worth fighting, that some uniforms represent more than just fabric and thread. That honor isn't something you wear on the outside. It's something you carry in your chest, even when the people who should love you most try to strip it away. So I stayed silent, like my mother. But unlike her, I kept putting on that uniform every Saturday. 4 years passed like a slow war of attrition. 4 years later, when West Point's acceptance letter arrived, I thought maybe, just maybe, my father would see that this wasn't a phase. This wasn't playing dress-up. I'd graduated valedictorian from the Academy Prep program. My ASVAB scores were in the 99th percentile. 3 congressmen had written recommendation letters. The United States Military Academy wanted me, and they were willing to pay for everything. I found my father in his study that evening, surrounded by law books and case files. The room smelled of expensive scotch and leather, the scent of a success that had always felt foreign to me. "Dad?" I said, my voice steady despite my racing heart. "I got in." He didn't look up from his papers. "Got in where?" "West Point. Full scholarship. They want me to start this fall." The silence stretched between us like a chasm. When he finally raised his eyes, they were cold as winter steel. "Absolutely not. Dad, this is you throwing your life away." He stood up, his 6-foot frame towering over me. "You're 17 years old, Alexis. You have perfect grades, perfect test scores. Harvard called last week. Yale sent a personal letter. You could be anything. A lawyer, a doctor, a businesswoman. And you want to waste all that potential playing soldier? I want to serve my country." He laughed, that same bitter sound that had haunted my childhood. "Serve your country? Honey, politicians serve countries. Lawyers serve countries. Soldiers are just the tools politicians use and throw away." My mother appeared in the doorway, her face pale. "Marcus, maybe we should stay out of this, Grace." His voice was sharp enough to cut glass. "Our daughter is about to ruin her life, and you want to encourage her?" I looked at my mother, hoping for something. A word of support, a look of understanding, anything. But she just stood there, silent and small, like she'd been for 16 years of marriage. "I'm going," I said quietly. "Not with my blessing, not with my money, and not with the Hawthorne name." His words hit like physical blows. You walk out that door to play soldier, and you're on your own. I was 17 years old when I learned that love sometimes comes with conditions, that family doesn't always mean acceptance, that the uniform I wore with pride made me a stranger in my own home, but I went anyway. The gray walls of West Point would become my salvation. West Point was everything my father said it would be, and nothing like he expected. It was brutal. 4 years of academic rigor that made Harvard look like high school. Physical challenges that pushed my body past limits I didn't know existed. Mental pressure that weighed down on cadets like lead blankets, driving some to quit and others to greatness. But it was also beautiful. For the first time in my life, I was surrounded by people who understood why the uniform mattered, why service meant something more than sacrifice, why some things are worth fighting for, even when the people you love most don't understand. I called home exactly once during my first semester. "Hi, Mom." "Alexis?" Her voice was soft, almost whispered. "How are you, sweetheart?" "I'm good, really good. I made the dean's list and I'm captain of the—" "Your father's not here," she interrupted quickly. "He's at the office." We both knew he was probably sitting 10 feet away, listening to every word. "Mom, I'm happy here. I'm where I belong." The silence stretched across the phone line like an ocean. "I should go," she finally whispered. "Take care of yourself, honey." The line went dead, and I didn't call home again for 2 years. At West Point, my last name didn't matter. My father's money and reputation meant nothing. What mattered was leadership, character, the willingness to push through when everything inside you screamed to quit. I graduated second in my class with a commission as a second lieutenant in the Army Corps of Engineers. The ceremony was held on a perfect May morning, with families scattered across the parade grounds like flowers in a meadow. I scanned the crowd that day, looking for faces I knew would never be there. My parents had refused to come. "We won't be props in your military fantasy," my father had said over the phone. But my grandfather's ghost was there, I swear, in the way the sunlight hit my uniform, in the weight of the gold bars on my shoulders, in the pride that filled my chest as I took my oath to defend the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic. Some battles you fight alone. 2 years after graduation, the Army sent me to a place that would change everything. Iraq was a furnace that burned away everything soft in me and left only steel. I was 23 years old when my unit deployed to Fallujah. I was a second lieutenant with a fresh diploma and theories about leadership that had never been tested by incoming mortar fire. The desert taught me what my father's law books never could, that real leadership isn't about having the right answers. It's about making decisions when there are no good options. It's about standing between your soldiers and danger, even when your knees are shaking with fear. It's about earning respect one choice at a time. Staff Sergeant Rodriguez was the first person who really saw me. Not as the rich girl playing soldier, not as the officer trying to prove herself. Just as Lieutenant Hawthorne, the person his men would follow into hell if she asked. "You're different than the other butter bars they send us," he told me after my first month in country, using the slang for new second lieutenants. "Different how?" "You listen before you talk. You ask questions before you give orders. And when the shooting starts," he paused, checking his rifle. "When the shooting starts, you're the first one through the door." 6 months later, Rodriguez was bleeding out in my arms after an IED tore through our convoy. His last words were asking me to tell his wife he was proud to serve under me. I held him as he died, this man who was twice my age and 10 times my experience. In that moment, I understood something my father never would. Some uniforms are earned in blood and sacrifice, not bought with money and ambition. I came home from that deployment with a bronze star and a purple heart of my own. The medals felt heavier than they should have, weighted down with the memory of good soldiers who didn't make it home. My parents didn't attend the ceremony. The years that followed became a blur of service and sacrifice. The next 15 years passed in a blur of deployments, promotions, and endless service. Afghanistan. Iraq again. Syria. Each war zone taught me something new about leadership, about sacrifice, about the cost of freedom that most people never think about when they sleep safely in their beds. I made captain at 28, major at 31, lieutenant colonel at 35. Each promotion came with more responsibility, more soldiers under my command, more families depending on the decisions I made in concrete bunkers and tactical operations centers thousands of miles from home. And each promotion came with the same bitter silence from the house where I grew up. I tried reaching out a few times over the years. A postcard from Afghanistan, a photo from my major's promotion ceremony, a letter after I was awarded the Distinguished Service Cross for actions I still can't talk about. The responses were always the same. Nothing. My mother would answer the phone occasionally, her voice thin and tired, aging in ways that had nothing to do with time. We'd talk about the weather, about her garden, about everything except the elephant in the room, that her daughter was becoming one of the most decorated soldiers in the army, and her husband pretended I didn't exist. "He's proud of you," she whispered once, during a call that lasted exactly 3 minutes. He doesn't know how to show it. But I'd learned to read people in war zones. I could hear lies in a voice, even when they came wrapped in love. By age 38, I had earned a title that felt both foreign and familiar. Colonel Hawthorne. That's what they called me by age 38. Colonel Hawthorne, the woman who'd led 3 successful deployments, who'd earned every major decoration short of the Medal of Honor, who'd become the poster child for women in combat leadership. I was serving as brigade commander at Fort Campbell when the call came that would change everything. "Colonel Hawthorne?" The voice on the other end was crisp, professional. "This is General Martinez's aide. The general would like to see you in his office at 1400 hours. 3-star generals don't call colonels for casual conversations." My mind raced through every possible scenario as I drove across post, most of them ending with my career in ruins. General Martinez's office was exactly what you'd expect. American flags, military photos, a desk that had probably seen a dozen commanders come and go. But the man behind it was different than I'd imagined. Smaller, more thoughtful, with eyes that seemed to see everything. "Sit down, Colonel." He gestured to a chair across from his desk. "We need to talk." I sat, keeping my back straight, my eyes forward. "Alexis. May I call you Alexis?" "Good. Alexis, I'm going to tell you something that doesn't leave this room until tomorrow morning. Understood?" "Yes, sir. The President has submitted your name to Congress for promotion to Brigadier General." The words hit me like incoming artillery. I'd dreamed about this moment for 20 years, but hearing it out loud made it feel surreal, impossible. "Sir, I'm honored, but there's more." He leaned back in his chair. "This isn't just any promotion. You're being considered for command of the 3rd Infantry Division. If confirmed, you'd be the youngest female general in Army history to command a division." The room seemed to tilt around me. Division command. 15,000 soldiers. The kind of responsibility that keeps you awake at night and makes you gray before your time. "The promotion ceremony will be at the Pentagon," General Martinez continued. "Full honors. The President will be there. CNN will cover it live." "This is a big deal, Alexis. Bigger than you probably realize." "Sir, may I ask, why me?" He smiled, and for the first time since I'd entered his office, he looked less like a general and more like a proud father. "Because in 20 years of military service, you've never asked that question before. You've just done the job, whatever it was, wherever it needed to be done. You've earned this, Colonel, the hard way." That night, I sat in my quarters staring at my phone for 3 hours before I finally dialed the number I knew by heart. "Hello?" My mother's voice was older, more fragile than I remembered. "Mom, it's me. Alexis? Oh, honey, it's so good to hear your voice." "Mom, I need to tell you something. I'm being promoted to general." The silence on the other end lasted so long I thought the call had dropped. "Mom? General?" Her voice was barely a whisper. "You mean, like a real general?" "Yes, Mom. A real general. The ceremony is next Friday at the Pentagon. I was wondering if you and Dad might want to come." Another silence. This one even longer. "I'll talk to your father," she finally said. The conversation that followed would break 20 years of silence. My father called me back 2 hours later. I was sitting on my balcony, watching the sun set over Kentucky hills, when my phone rang. "Alexis." His voice was exactly the same as it had been 20 years earlier. Cold, authoritative, dismissive. "Hi, Dad. Your mother tells me you're being promoted to general." "Yes, sir. Brigadier General. Division Command." "I see." He paused, and I could almost see him in his study, surrounded by his law books and case files. "And you want us to attend this ceremony? I'd like you to be there, yes. You know how I feel about your choices, Alexis. That hasn't changed." Something inside me snapped. 20 years of silence, of trying to earn his approval, of pretending his rejection didn't cut me to the bone. I was done. You're right, Dad. Your feelings haven't changed. But I have. I'm not that 8-year-old girl playing with Grandpa's medals anymore. I'm not the 17-year-old you kicked out for choosing service over selfishness. I'm a general in the United States Army. I command 15,000 soldiers. I've been decorated for valor in 3 combat zones, and I did it all without your support, without your approval, and definitely without your permission. The silence on the other end was deafening. So here's what's going to happen, I continued, my voice steady despite the storm raging in my chest. I'm sending you an invitation to my promotion ceremony. You can come or not come. You can be proud or ashamed. You can finally see what I've become, or you can keep pretending your daughter doesn't exist. But either way, next Friday at 10 in the morning, I'm going to take my oath as a general officer, and nothing you say or do will change that. I hung up before he could respond. The morning of my promotion arrived with the weight of destiny. The Pentagon on promotion day looked like something out of a movie. Television trucks lined the parking lot. Reporters clustered around entrances. Security was tighter than I'd seen since 9/11. I stood in the mirror of my hotel room that morning, adjusting my dress blue uniform for the 100th time. The reflection staring back at me was someone I barely recognized. A woman with gray threading through her dark hair, with lines around her eyes earned in desert sun and sleepless nights, with the bearing of someone who'd commanded soldiers in combat and never lost one to poor leadership. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. We're here. Mom. My hands shook as I read those 2 words. After 20 years of silence, they'd come. I didn't know what it meant, didn't know what to expect, but they were here. The promotion ceremony was held in the Pentagon Center courtyard, a space surrounded by 5 stories of American military history. A temporary stage had been erected, flanked by American flags and the banners of every major Army command. As I walked across the courtyard in formation with the other officers being promoted that day, I scanned the crowd of families and dignitaries. There, in the 3rd row, I saw them. My mother looked older, smaller than I remembered, but her eyes were bright with something I'd never seen before. Pride. She was wearing a navy blue dress and clutching a program like it was precious. And next to her, looking uncomfortable in a suit that probably cost more than most soldiers made in a month, was my father. He wasn't smiling. He wasn't applauding. But he was there. What happened next would be burned into my memory forever. The promotion ceremony itself was a blur of speeches and traditions. The Secretary of the Army spoke about service and sacrifice. A military chaplain offered a blessing. Various dignitaries said words about honor and duty that sounded important, but felt hollow after 20 years of living those concepts instead of just talking about them. But then came the moment I'd been waiting for my entire adult life. Ladies and gentlemen, the announcer's voice echoed across the courtyard. Please welcome Brigadier General Alexis Hawthorne to accept command of the 3rd Infantry Division. I walked across that stage with 20 years of rejection and doubt falling away behind me like shed armor. When I reached the podium and turned to face the crowd, everything else disappeared. 15,000 soldiers from my new command had been granted leave to attend the ceremony. They filled every available space in the courtyard, spilled out into corridors, lined balconies on every floor of the Pentagon. As I raised my right hand to take the oath, something incredible happened. First 1 soldier, then 10, then 100, then thousands, snapped to attention and saluted. Not because they were ordered to, not because it was protocol, but because they wanted to honor the moment when one of their own reached the highest levels of military leadership. The sound was like thunder, 10,000 boots coming together as one, 10,000 hands moving in perfect synchronization, 10,000 voices saying without words, "We believe in you. We trust you. We will follow you." I looked out at that sea of uniforms, at those faces representing every corner of America, every background and belief and dream, united in service to something bigger than themselves. And I realized that this was what my father had never understood. This wasn't about playing soldier. This wasn't about dress-up or childhood fantasies. This was about earning your place in something eternal, something that would outlast politics and personalities and all the small, bitter disappointments that make people like my father forget what greatness looks like. As I spoke the words of the oath, the same oath I'd taken as a 2nd lieutenant 20 years earlier, I saw my mother in the crowd. She was crying, her hands pressed to her mouth, her eyes shining with 20 years of suppressed pride finally allowed to show. And next to her, my father sat perfectly still, his face unreadable, his lawyer's mask firmly in place. But his eyes told a different story. The reception that followed felt like walking through a dream. After the ceremony, there was a reception in the Pentagon's executive dining room. Congressmen shook my hand. Generals offered congratulations. My new staff briefed me on the 100 urgent matters that would require my attention starting Monday morning. But all I could think about was the two people standing awkwardly by the windows, looking like they'd wandered into the wrong party. I finally broke away from the well-wishers and walked over to them. "Thank you for coming," I said simply. My mother immediately pulled me into a hug that felt like coming home after a very long deployment. "Oh, sweetheart, I'm so proud of you. So very proud." Her voice was thick with tears. "All those years I wanted to call, wanted to tell you, but your father—" "It's okay, Mom." She pulled back, studying my face like she was memorizing it. "You look just like your grandfather in uniform. Did you know that? Just like him." I turned to my father. He was standing perfectly straight, his hands clasped behind his back, his expression unreadable. "Dad." "General." The word came out stiff, formal. We stood there for a moment, 20 years of hurt and misunderstanding stretching between us like a minefield. "I owe you an apology," he said finally. I blinked, certain I'd misheard. "I said some things when you were young, things I believed then. I thought I was protecting you from throwing your life away." He paused, looking around the room filled with uniforms and decorations and the quiet dignity of military service. I was wrong. It wasn't much. It wasn't 20 years worth of validation or support or love, but it was something. "When they announced your name today," he continued, his voice softer than I'd ever heard it, "and all those soldiers saluted you, I realized something. I've spent my whole career fighting for individual clients, for personal victories, for money and reputation. But you," he looked directly at me for the first time in 2 decades, "you've spent your whole career fighting for all of us, for the country, for ideals, for people you'll never meet who sleep safely because of what you do." He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out something that made my breath catch. My grandfather's Purple Heart, the same medal I'd found in the attic when I was 8 years old. "I should have given this to you a long time ago," he said, pressing it into my palm. "You would have been proud of what you've become. And I am too. 20 years of rejection, of silence, of feeling like a stranger in my own family, cracked open like ice in spring sun. Dad, I know I don't deserve forgiveness for the years I wasted being proud of the wrong things, but if you'll let me, I'd like to try to understand the daughter I was too stubborn to see." I looked down at the Purple Heart in my palm, then up at my father's face, and for the first time in 20 years, I saw something I'd stopped believing existed. Love without conditions, acceptance without reservations, pride in who I was, not who he wanted me to be. That night, alone in my hotel room, I reflected on the journey that had brought me here. That night, I sat in my hotel room still wearing my dress uniform, still holding my grandfather's Purple Heart, thinking about the 8-year-old girl who'd found those medals in a dusty attic and dreamed of wearing a uniform that meant something. My phone rang. It was Rodriguez's widow, calling from California. "General Hawthorne?" I saw the ceremony on the news. Miguel would have been so proud. "Thank you, Maria. That means everything. He used to tell me stories about you, you know, about how you'd sit with wounded soldiers in the field hospital, how you never asked your men to do anything you wouldn't do yourself. He said you were the kind of officer who made soldiers better people just by serving under you." After I hung up, I looked at myself in the hotel mirror one more time. The woman staring back had gray in her hair and lines around her eyes, and scars that would never fully heal. But she also had something that 8-year-old girl in the attic could never have imagined, the absolute certainty that she'd found her place in the world. The next morning, I would report to Fort Stewart, Georgia, to assume command of 15,000 soldiers who would trust me with their lives, their futures, their sacred duty to defend the nation. It was a responsibility that would keep me awake at night and age me before my time. But it was also the greatest honor I could imagine. Some uniforms are costumes, some are jobs, some are traditions passed down through generations, and some are callings that choose you when you're 8 years old, playing with medals in an attic, dreaming of being part of something bigger than yourself. I've worn my uniform for 20 years now. I've worn it in deserts and mountains, in ceremony and combat, in moments of triumph and hours of grief. But that morning at the Pentagon, when 10,000 soldiers saluted me and my father finally understood what I'd become, was the first time I wore it feeling completely, finally, undeniably home. You know, sitting here in this hotel room, still holding my grandfather's purple heart, I can't help but think about all the people who believed in me when my own family didn't. Rodriguez believed in me, my soldiers believed in me, and now, maybe you believe in stories like mine too. If this story touched something in you, if you've ever felt underestimated, overlooked, or forgotten, then I need to ask you for something. Something small, but it means everything to people like me who've lived these moments. Most people listen to stories like this and just move on. They don't hit that subscribe button. But that little red button, that's the only help channels like this need. It's free, it takes 2 seconds, and it tells the world that stories of people who refuse to give up actually matter. My father finally saw who I really was after 20 years, but I don't want to wait 20 years to know that you're part of this journey too. If you believe that everyone deserves their moment of recognition, if you think the underestimated deserve to have their stories heard, then please, hit subscribe, because the next story might be about someone just like you, someone waiting for their final revelation. Thank you for listening, thank you for believing, and thank you for being part of something bigger than all of us.